path to enlightenment, and today is the first step. I prepared for this in yesterday's live stream when I mentioned the teachings of the Buddha and the Four Noble Truths and the origins of suffering, and questioned yesterday the whole notion of identity. So please go back and look at the video from yesterday, but today we take it further, okay? And then if you like, we'll continue the series, The Path to Enlightenment, using right now the framework that comes to us from the teachings of Gautama Buddha, the teachings of Buddhism and Buddhist philosophy based on experiences in meditation. And so yesterday was, what was the connection between meditation and enlightenment? What does enlightenment mean? And what are the origins of suffering? And we mentioned the Four Noble Truths. So please go back and watch that video or listen to it, and then what I'm going to share with you today will be more relevant. But as we go through this series, you'll see that they sequentially follow what we're calling today the path to enlightenment. So far, we've discussed interdependent co-arising, we discussed the three dharma seals, that the relative is impermanent, that the separate self doesn't exist, there's only interbeingness, that nirvana or enlightenment is the ultimate reality, and suffering occurs because of pain, but also because of pleasure, also arises from the fear of impermanence, and also ultimately arises from the constricted identity that we call the ego. So the ego is a constricted identity of an infinite identity. Think of it that way. The ego is your self-image, and the infinite being is yourself. So you are the self having the experience that we call a person. But the person is indeed an evolving ego body mind that is actually a mode of knowing. It's a mode of experience. You're not your self-image, you are the self. The infinite squeezed into the volume of a body and the span of a lifetime. So this constricted self, the ego, the self-image, is infinity squeezed as an experience into the volume of a body and the span of a lifetime. And so, according to the Buddha, the five aggregates that constitute the constricted self. By the way, there is a lot of enlightenment in this understanding. If you go to the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist monk, to whom I owe a great debt of gratitude, because I learned a lot from him, and also to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who's the embodiment, I believe, of an enlightened being. So, all glory to them. Here are the five aggregates that constitute the constricted I. The first is the localizing of being as a form. What is the form? A body-mind. And it's a changing form, right? It's not the same form. It began with a fertilized egg, and right now it's what you see. What you see as me, and what you see as you, and what you see as everything else. So when the infinite gets localized as a form, that's the first aggregate of the constricted self. But how does that happen? It comes from the localization of sensation that we call feeling. So every thought, every feeling, every image, every perception, every idea, every emotion is entangled. Entangled means one influences immediately results in the other. And so whenever you have emotions, any emotion, anger, joy, love, compassion, empathy, guilt, resentment, it localizes itself as a sensation in your body, which is entangled with the image. Just think of somebody you had an argument with, okay, just now. Think of them. You see their image, you hear their voice, you hear the argument, you feel the emotion, you feel the sensation in your body. That's the entanglement of experience. So when our experience gets localized, it does so as an emotion or a thought or a feeling, but it's all embodied in the sensation we are having. The sensation is entangled with the totality of experience. So that's the second aggregate. The third aggregate of the constricted self comes from the conception, this is me and this is mine. Let's try and figure this out. So let's say you're feeling angry right now. There's a sensation attached to that. When you not only identify with the sensation, you say, I own this sensation. I own this sensation. You identify with it. Then, of course, it gets constricted as me and mine. In reality, it doesn't belong to you. How can you say anger belongs to you? Or empathy belongs to you? Or guilt belongs to you? Or joy belongs to you? These are qualia. These are sensations that embody all experience. And if you say it's mine, then that's a concept. That's a concept. You're holding on to a sensation that you take ownership of. You say it's me and mine. Now, just do a little experiment right now. We can bring that same experience back. Think of somebody you fought with, had an argument with, okay? And recall the experience. See the images, what was happening then, hear the conversation, feel the emotion. In other words, remember it, everything about it. And now feel your body. There's a sensation. Now observe the sensation. Now ask yourself, am I the sensation or am I the observer of the sensation? Okay, no matter what the situation is, it's accompanied by sensation. Sensation is the one modality that embodies all other modalities. So now you're feeling upset, you had an argument, you can recall the voices, you can see the images, you can feel the emotions, but now focus only on the sensation which embodies the whole experience. Observe it. Ask yourself, am I the sensation or am I the observer of the sensation? Number one. Then ask yourself, where was the sensation before I recalled this experience? Where was it? Well, it was a memory, but where was the memory? And you know, that's part of the hard problem of consciousness. Nobody can tell you where that memory is. Why? Because that memory is in consciousness. And that memory is in you, not in your brain. Your brain actualizes it. But before you recall the memory, it's in you. You mean consciousness. Now, as soon as you activate that retrieval of the memory, then the sensation occurs. And now watch the sensation and say, am I the sensation or am I the observer of the sensation? Answer is obvious, right? As the observer of the sensation, you're not the sensation. And therefore, you're intrinsically free of that sensation as the observer. Not only are you intrinsically free of that sensation, you're intrinsically free of all sensations and all images and all experiences that are embodied in that memory. Intrinsically, you're free of them. Now, you can choose to identify them and make a story out of it, or you can choose to look at the sensation, know that you're intrinsically free of the sensation, therefore intrinsically free of that experience, therefore ready to create any experience, right? So between two sensations is you, the infinite being, free of all sensations unless you identify with them. And you're free to do that. In fact, your entire identity is based on the stories around sensations. Period. Therefore, your entire identity is provisional. Okay? It's a changing identity of interbeingness. And when that interbeingness is not in flow with the interbeingness of the matrix of all experience, then there's resistance, then we don't feel good. Then that sensation comes, which embodies all the experience and our attachment to the experience. That's the meaning of the phrase, I use memories, but I don't allow memories to use me. Use memories so you can find home, you can find your way home, but if you allow memories to use you, you become the victim. So here we are. Conception, this is me or mine, owning a sensation, squeezes you into this constricted identity. The fourth aggregate of the constricted self is disposition, as mentioned by the Buddhists in the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh and others. And disposition is the conditioning to seek happiness through a series of behaviors that propagate ignorance. So once again, disposition is the conditioning of the ego mind to seek happiness through a series of behaviors that propagate ignorance. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of your true being. Ignorance of your infinite being. Ignorance of your infinite potential of all that was, all that is, all that will be. The fourth aggregate of the constricted self. And then the fifth aggregate is actually the constricted self itself, the ego identity, the image. So self-esteem is not self-image. Self-esteem is freedom from self-image. Okay. Now, let me summarize the 5 aggregates of the constricted self. And we could spend a month discussing each of these, and maybe we will. So the first is form, the localization of being. The second is feeling, the localization of sensation. The third is conception. This is me or mine. This sensation belongs to me. The fourth is disposition, perpetuating ignorance by attaching ourselves and identifying ourselves with sensations. And finally, how we create the evolving self-image, and ultimately, how we become free of it. This is the understanding of the 5 aggregates, which then reinforces the 3 dharmasis. The relative is impermanent. What do I mean by impermanent? That which is squeezed into the volume of a body in the span of a lifetime, and a particular story is impermanent. First dharmasil. The second dharmasil, the separate self does not exist, only interbeingness. And the third dharmasil, nirvana, is the ultimate reality. Nirvana means instead of identifying with the experience, go back and identify with the source of the experience, which is the true self, the true being, not the ego identity. So my friends, we have discussed a lot the last 2 days, but today we have begun the process, the path to enlightenment. And if you are enjoying this, let me know so we can continue with this. And why do we want this? Because we want to be free to create our reality, whatever it is, understanding that all realities are provisional anyway, and all identities are provisional. So I'll summarize now by saying something which might appear shocking to you. In every act of seeing is born both the seer and the scenery. I'll repeat. In every act of seeing is born both the seer and the scenery. Okay, so look at one act of seeing. Act of seeing is this. This is the act of seeing. So what am I seeing now? I'm seeing this identity, which is the seer, and I'm seeing that statue and everything else, that's the scenery. But what is the fundamental act right now? Seeing. And in that seeing is born the experience of the seer and the rest of the scenery. Okay? Which means there's a new seer and a new scenery in every seeing. And if you really understand this, that's all there is. Consciousness modifying itself as seeing and creating both the seer and the scenery at the same time. But every act of perception is actually a new seer and a new scenery. Why does it feel the same? Why does that feel that I'm the same being all along? Of course, I don't remember life as a fertilized ovum or as a fetus or an embryo or as an infant. I don't remember when I learned to speak English, learned to walk, learned to, toilet training, learned to communicate with others. I don't remember those things. But I must have learned them, otherwise I wouldn't be able to use them. All perception was learned. All story was fabricated. But that's my identity. Now, should I keep that identity? Should I keep this illusory identity of experience as body-mind experiencing the scenery? Well, first of all, it feels real, right? That's the definition of an illusion. It feels real. The ground feels real even though it's a sensation. The ground appears stationary, even though it's spinning at dizzying speed and hurtling through space at thousands of miles an hour. Things appear solid, even though they're proportionately as void as intergalactic space. So everything is an illusion, and yet it feels real. And because it feels real, then it seems Deepak Chopra is real, even though he isn't, and everything else is real, even though it isn't. But that's the definition of an illusion. We're stuck with it. But it is a result of our stories. And for every story you have, there are infinite other stories. For every sensation you have, there are infinite other sensations. For every image that you create in your mind, infinite images. For every emotion, infinite others available to you. For every perception, every infinite nuances of that sensation. For every color, infinite modalities of nuances of color. For every taste, for every smell, for every texture. You are the infinite being, stuck with a particular story, which is totally provisional, including the story, I am Deepak Chopra. And this is the universe. In fact, there is only the activity of consciousness modifying itself into perception, cognition, knowing, and story. And who's doing it? You are. So today, let us conclude here. We have begun our journey to enlightenment with understanding the 5 aggregates of the constricted self. So if you're in the mood for it, tomorrow I will discuss the 8-fold path that the Buddha mentions as the path to enlightenment. But then we can take that and go deeper into the 5 kleshas of Vedanta, the 8 limbs of yoga, Kriya Yoga, Tantra, modes of knowing, modes of experience, innumerable knowers, innumerable seers, innumerable possible sceneries, all within the self. Ultimate freedom to create or not create, to upgrade the illusion, to downgrade the illusion, to create a new story. And with your help, if we all take this path to enlightenment, we can create a new story for a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world for all of us, for all of existence, for all of life. We should do it. And if not now, when? If not now, when? Okay, Bobby says she's loving this. Amita says we want more. I enjoy this, so I'll keep coming back every day as long as you're there to participate in this. Okay, friends, keep dreaming, because every dream can be actualized. Every dream. You are the dreamer, not the dream. Good day.